All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to have Arlen with us today. Arlen, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, but my head is kind of spinning with all the news going on around us. There's just all kinds of topics, and frankly, I can't see anything positive about any of them.
Yeah, I got to be with you, Arlen. I've been feeling really down lately. There's very little to feel, in my estimation, to feel optimistic about. The president is a buffoon. I think I called him a murderous, not buffoon. Boor. He's boorish. He's a cad. He's crude. He's embarrassing. And we're going to get into a little bit about that, as well as a lot of the really bad stuff he's doing, as well as why he's even president. Before we go there, Arlen, it's been miserable. Putting everything else aside, the weather here's been awful.
Yeah.
Is it nice out there on the beautiful left coast?
Most of the time it is. It's a little overcast now, but the sun usually comes out. I'm kind of in what they call a sun belt, so I should get some sun later on today. But yeah, all over the country, it's pretty bad. Nancy, my wife, is in Vermont, and she's told me how oppressive the heat and humidity are there. And, all the problem in New York had a really bad weather, climate or weather problem there yesterday. And, it's all around the country. But who's going to stop it? Who's going to help? Trump has pretty much decimated all the help that would come from the government, from the national government. And so, there's really nothing that can be done at the moment to stop any of this climate change.
We really don't have leadership when it comes to addressing the climate holocaust. It's just not there. It's not there in either party. I can't think of any politician. I think the best one, Arlen, honestly, was, and she was good. She was pretty good when I was an activist. Cory, not Booker, Cory Bush from Missouri really took this stuff seriously. She had an advisor on her staff who was very serious about the environment, and she spoke about it. She took steps as best she could to try to at least put the issue of climate front and center in Congress, with little success, sadly. And of course, she's out of the Washington at this point.
Well, I think it's unfair to blame the Democrats. I mean, they've had all these things. The Weather Service, everything was fully funded, and they did all they could to make sure that there would be help for the rest of the country. But Trump is pretty much taking everything away and giving it to the states to solve, and the states don't have the money or the ability to do so.
Yeah, we'll get into that in more detail. What's happening with FEMA and NOAA and other climate-related government agencies, to the extent they even still exist on a federal level. With regard, though, to the climate holocaust, I definitely can blame the Democrats, because both Obama and Biden, for all their acknowledgement that climate crisis is real and human caused, the policies that they pursued did not in any way reduce our production or consumption of fossil fuels. So I can blame them, because the problem that we are experiencing, the ever hotter temperatures, are directly resulting from our continued consumption of fossil fuels, and neither Obama nor Biden did anything about that.
Yeah, I think they can see it, they can understand it, but to get anything passed in Congress is virtually impossible, especially if Trump is president. I mean, they just don't have the numbers and Republicans always push back on things like that. So, they really are limited without power, and they don't have power.
All right, Arlen, let's shelve that conversation for now. I want to talk about another area where I have put a lot of bipartisan blame. I don't think either party has any kind of claim to any real ethical or moral behavior. The death toll now, we're seeing it about 700 higher than yesterday. Not quite sure why that was. I mentioned that a number of deaths over the weekend did not appear to be in the official count from the health ministry there. And apparently they've caught up. There also may be some bodies that have been recently recovered and are added. So it may not necessarily mean we had 700 deaths over the weekend, but we may have. The Gaza death toll nears 58,500, according to Anadolu Ajansi, and they, of course, rely on the health ministry in Palestine. That's today's issue of that newspaper, and it's a terrible, terrible situation. Let me get the full screen there. They come up. They have the number 58,479, 93 killed yesterday,
since the start,
58,479 since the start. 93 bodies brought in yesterday.
Just goes on and on and on, and nobody's talking about it really, and it's terrible.
We're seeing a little more coverage in mainstream media. There's an article in today's Washington Post about this. I ultimately didn't go with it, but I was pleased that they have the numbers. The New York Times seems to be pretty much absent without leave on this story, although they do cover one specific death, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. Just want to go through the rest of these. Just to real quick wrap this up, at least for today's program. So again, I just juxtaposed that number or transposed that number, 58,479. And I said up to 700 people because the number that we reported Friday was about 57,750, somewhere in that range. So it's gone up over 700 since Friday, but that may also include a lot of newly discovered or newly identified remains. And the number for Trump has not gone up 700. It's gone up about 400. And so that suggests to me there may be a bunch of bodies that could date back even a year or more that had not previously been discovered. So there you go. Over 7,600 that BB and
Trump
hard
to quantify. I mean,
are responsible for.
There's so many deaths going on, so many explosions. That's hard to quantify. But obviously, it's terrible if you're a civilian in Gaza. I mean, you don't have a chance. You go to somewhere to get some food and you get bombed. You go somewhere to get some health care and you get bombed. It's an impossible situation if you live there.
Oh, it's horrible. It's just absolutely awful. I want to. Speaking of deaths, right? I mean, it's impossible to quantify, really. We just have no idea. This is one death we do know about. This is an American. It says U.S. citizen. He's American born. This isn't like, as the Trump people would call it, an anchor baby or someone like that. This man was born in Florida, and they covered the story very well in Democracy Now! His killing, his slaying by Israeli settlers, I'd call them land thieves, on Friday. Here we go.
We begin today's show looking at the rise of Israeli settler violence against Palestinians across the occupied West Bank. The family of 20-year-old American Seyfola Musalat is demanding justice and for the U.S. government to lead an investigation into his killing by Israeli settlers.
All right, and then let me play a little more. Yeah, let me play a little more, and then we'll get some commentary here.
And another Palestinian, 23-year-old Mohammed al-Shalabi, were attacked by a group of Israeli settlers while they were in a neighboring town of 15Jul, where their families own farmland, and an area Israeli settlers have recently repeatedly targeted with violent attacks, with Palestinians describing being terrorized as Israelis have seized agricultural land on a Palestinian farm. In response, residents of nearby villages have organized to protect the land. On Friday, when Saif joined them, Israeli settlers brutally beat him and fatally shot al-Shalabi. Eyewitnesses said at least two of the settlers were armed with M16 assault rifles and wore army pants, and described how the settlers surrounded Saif and others, also attacking them with batons.
Yeah, so just absolutely horrific story, Arlen. And unsurprisingly, there's been no commentary from the White House. The State Department issued kind of a boilerplate regret. What would you like to see Democrats do, if anything, in response? And do you think there should be some sort of concerted Democratic commentary with respect to this killing?
Well, I'm like you, Hal. I'd like to see us, get out of there and really control what's going on, and we have no control over anything. Israel pretty much does what it wants, and they're not going to get investigated by the Palestinians, and certainly Trump has no interest in talking about these kind of horrible events. So it's not going to be investigated in this country. So it's just going to go on and on and on. And there's a lot of extremists on both sides. And it's going to be, you'll just hear more and more about too many deaths.
Well, you're exactly right about Trump. He's left it to the Israelis. Apparently, Israel says they're looking into what happened. Their military is under, as far as we can tell, seems over and over. We hear about stories exactly like this. The military is under standby orders whenever Israeli settlers or any paramilitary type organizations, right-wing thugs from Israel go after Palestinians. The military sits on its hands when there's any organized response by the Palestinians, or even an individual response. The army steps in to protect the assailants, the Israeli assailants, those who are stealing the land. I have a question, though. You're right. Trump is awful, and you can see the father's messages to Trump. Why aren't you? My son's an American. He was born here. He's born in Florida. He had a job. He was helping. We have a family business. You love small businesses, just like Kamala, where we have an ice cream shop there, and I think it's in St. Petersburg, right on the beach. Why aren't you putting Americans first? And I think it's the exact right question. But do you think, I understand Democrats don't have the levers of power, but do you see this as an opportunity for them to express either moral outrage or even, putting aside the morality, to use this for some political gain for themselves?
Well, they should. I mean, I'd like to see that. Obviously, Kamala, when she was running, just decided that she would go with whatever Joe Biden was doing, and she didn't, want any change. But I think, the Democrats really need to get a little bit more strong about this and realize that there's no upside for us, and it's just going to be continued killing until we get some kind of negotiation, which is going to be tough to get. It's a bad situation, and it's going to continue.
Do you think that the failure of the Democrats to take a moral stance as a party, now to be very fair, there have been some individual Democrats who've stepped forward and said this is wrong. Rashida Tlaib has absolutely condemned what Israel did and demanded the Justice Department investigate, or the State Department, I guess in this case, would have to do the investigations. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but I know she was very outspoken. Several other members of the squad, as it's so called, I believe Ayanna Pressley, has issued a statement, have issued statements. As far as I can tell, and I look, but I always miss things, Arlen. As far as I can tell, Democratic leadership has not issued any kind of a statement. When I say leadership, I mean Chuck Schumer, the minority leader in the Senate, and I mean Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House of Representatives, nor have any other members of the Democratic leadership in either party. So I want to ask, why do you think that is? I would ask you, does that failure, and you can see here that no one from Congress has reached out to Safola Musalet's father. He's the one we just heard speaking. No one has reached out to his family. No one from the White House has. Is that failure an explanation, in part, why Democrats are held in such low esteem?
Well, first of all, you have to ask yourself, who is the Democratic leadership? They really, you've got Schumer, you've got Hakeem Jeffries, but they have no power. They could say something, and individual Democrats will say things, about that they don't like what's going on. But, the Democrats have no power. Their leadership is, can't do anything at all about this. So,
doesn't the failure to say anything make it less likely that they'll gain power in the future? I understand that they can't force Trump to do something that he doesn't want to do. Understood. But wouldn't being outspoken in opposition to what happened. In other words, in opposition to the blank check that the White House has given Israel. Wouldn't that go some way towards rehabilitating Americans' view of this party? At least some Americans, at least many of the young Americans who look at the party and feel that it doesn't in any way represent what they believe in.
Like I say over and over again, how they have no power. I mean, there are individuals speaking out, saying we should, do something about all the killing in Gaza, but where are people supposed to go to find out what the Democratic leadership is doing? Basically, you have the media doesn't really report much about that because the Democrats have no power anywhere, and so I think it's
Hakeem Jeffries. I mean, Schumer and Jeffries are on TV. They're out there. They're certainly their go-to people. I see them on the Sunday shows. Their Twitter is always being monitored. If they issue a statement on social media or they call a press conference, it will be covered. And if they came out and condemned what happened and they condemned the Trump administration's non-response, don't you think that would be well received by some of the people who right now look at the Democratic Party askance, who look at it as a weak and morally vapid, morally empty vessel?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. But, Schumer is just too old and Hakeem Jeffries is just too moderate and mild to really want to do anything and to kind of stir things up. So I just don't see them doing it. I'd like to see a better class of leadership in the Democratic Party, a lot of young people. David Hogg tried to get on their leadership and they kicked him out because they thought he was challenging incumbents and that would be bad. And so the Democratic Party doesn't have like one person they can go to and say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, this is what we believe. They're pretty much scattered all over the place as far as I can see.
Political writer pundit. I think we gave him a slightly different moniker this week, mainly not because of any change in Arlen status, but because I deleted your last one, so I had to come up with a new one on the sly. Representative Kathy Castor, who is his congresswoman or was the family congresswoman, said that she is heartbroken, which I thought was good as far as it went, but the media points out here, Zateo, that she doesn't mention the specific way that he was killed, beaten to death by Israeli settlers. So you're missing the story by doing that, Zateo. And I just couldn't help but post this, Arlen. I'm far more critical of the Democrats than you are, but there's Kathy Castor. She is on the Energy and Commerce Committee. And if you look at her top contributor, it's not a huge amount of money, but her top contributor in the last cycle was AIPAC. And I got to believe that is, lessening her appetite to say anything that that organization might not like.
Yeah, and let's face it, right now, Gaza, the situation there is not being talked about because now they're talking about Ukraine and other issues. And so it's not talked about like you take the time to talk about this and how horrible it is and all the disasters over there. But the rest of the mainstream media does not, as far as I can tell.
This is true. But you know what? American people, the American public, and especially those a lot younger than we are, Arlen, are really, really upset. I mean, I think and it's not just younger folks either. Lots of seniors as well. 57%, I believe, is the differential in between those who prefer Gaza, who are sympathetic to Gaza right now, and those who are sympathetic to Israel and the Democrat Party. It's somewhere in the nature of like about 20% of Democrats now prefer Israel. And so, I may be wrong. I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but at least 2-1, twice as many Democrats now say they support Gaza rather than Israel. And yet the Democratic Party electeds are obviously on the other side of that equation.
Yeah, I think it would be really nice if a lot of the Democratic representatives and senators kind of formed a coalition or something that would say, hey, this is the wrong policy that we're pursuing there. Let's change it and, hold Israel more accountable. I would like to see that, but it'd be hard to, summon everybody together to agree to that.
Well, I could not agree with you more, Arlen. I think it's virtually impossible. You would have thought some of those so-called squad members, Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, or Omer, not Omar, Omer, I believe, AOC, some of the others would have kind of a united message, Greg Kassar, but they really don't. They all go their own way when it comes to fundraising. They all look at different sources for that money, and they're simply not prepared to just stand up together and fight for what's right. And this is different than the Republicans. You saw that quote. It used to be called the Tea Party, now the Freedom Caucus. They have united on occasion. I think a big reason for that, this is not to say that they're more moral people. I think a big reason is that Republicans get money no matter what. There are going to be some billionaires or very wealthy funders in their districts who support their policies. The Democratic Party, to the extent it does what the American people want, generally is going to run afoul of its donors. The donors are wealthy, and donors don't like policies that make life better for the poor, struggling, and working class, who are now, I think, ascendant in terms of population in this country.
I think you hit it right on the head, Hal. That's what it is. You got people with money, important people that really have the clout. When people are not going to look at the squad and say, "Oh, the squad, believes this," and they have no influence. They're one extreme of the Democratic Party, but the Democratic Party is still kind of split in a lot of ways, and they're pretty much thrashing around trying to figure out the best way to get the American people on their side. But I think Trump pretty much takes up all the news. He's what everybody talks about.
I mean, he's really, really bad. And we've got some stories we're going to get to about just how bad he is. But I just want to go through this a little bit more about the Democrats. New poll delivers troubling signs for Democrats. And you can see here, even since Trump took office, the party has lost popularity. This is after they lost in the general election. And yet now they're even less popular. Their credibility has plummeted. They're viewed as out of touch, woke, and weak. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, Arlen, except to ask you, aren't you, shouldn't you be? If you're not, I am. I mean, I'm actually not, because this is what I expected, but you're a loyal Democrat. You support the Democrat Party. You think people should vote for Democrats. You're angry at me because maybe not angry, but you feel like I made a mistake for sure voting for Jill Stein, not Kamala. And I hate to put words in your mouth so you can disagree with me. Maybe I'm wrong about this. And you think also that at this point, seeing just how awful Trump is, and I acknowledge he's worse than I thought. I didn't think he would be quite this bad. I should be at this point recognizing that it was an all hands on deck moment. We all had to support Kamala. I'm not there. It's not my party. I will vote for Democrats if I think they're good. I will not vote for them if I think they're bad. But you are more blue, not true blue, but you're more blue than I am. So aren't you angry at them? Don't you feel like that as a party, they have betrayed this country, recognizing how awful Trump is? Shouldn't they be doing more? If not to stop him, if they can, as you seem to think they can't, at least to make themselves more popular and a viable opposition in next year's midterms?
Yeah, I think that's their only hope is next year's midterms, because, if some of the problems that Trump is causing, messes a lot of states up, then it's possible that Democrats could even win enough votes to even, have more people in the Senate and the House and maybe control them. But, I have a lot of disappointment with the Democratic Party too. And that they're not doing much. They are relied too much on the big money, on corporations. And, they're not a great alternative right now, but, they have no way to get their voices out, really. I've never seen any headlines what Schumer says or Hakeem Jeffries says. nobody really cares that much. The Democrats lost, and that hurts them. And Trump keeps, drum beating how horrible Biden was and how horrible the Democrats were. And people believe him because, that's another advantage that the Republicans have, that the MAGA people have, is they have, they have forums where they could, talk about all these things, and they're going to get coverage, but Democrats don't have any place to get the coverage that they need.
All right, let's talk about how bad Trump is. We spent more time than probably you wanted to on the Democrats, and maybe that's not fair. And you gave me some really good stories. This is not one of the ones you gave me, but I think I called Trump a bore, and I think this is such a perfect example of it. And given how important sports are to Americans, to the whole world, I mean, sports are huge. Trump's behavior this past Sunday in New Jersey, he was at the Club World Cup final, which was won by Chelsea, and Cole Palmer, the great forward for that club. I believe he was the MVP. He should have been. He scored 2 goals in the final. They were all like, they couldn't believe how, and I use the word boorish, this president was. He's standing there with, this isn't even an American sport. It's a British club. It's English. It's from London. He's standing there in the middle of the field, and the picture really does speak so loudly as they try to, even the FIFA chair tries to usher him off. You can see him there. They're like, really? Look at Cole Palmer. He's like, what the hell are you doing? He said after the event, he said, yeah, I don't know what he was doing. I was like, yeah, I thought he might be there for a moment, but then he just didn't go away. And I'm not going to play the video, Arlen, because the reason I'm not going to play it is because I'm afraid of any kind of copyright. These sports videos, the sports people get very nervous if they go after you if you take their videos. So, I mean, what do you think of this? Don't you think this is the kind of thing that should make people be like, what the hell? It's an embarrassment, is it not?
It is an embarrassment, and he's been that way his entire life. Nobody should be surprised. He's got the, massive ego, and he thinks he's the greatest person that ever lived, and and everybody's afraid to take him on, so he's going to do whatever he wants, whatever he feels like. If he wants more attention, he'll find a way to get it. He's got so much power right now that nobody can stop him.
Well, I just want to go into this a little bit more because I kind of want to get your thought, and I don't really, sometimes they ask you questions and they're a little unfair because I've got an answer in my head, but I'm not really sure what the right answer to this is. What response, if any, from the opposition, meaning the Democrats. But as you can see there, during the trophy presentation, the players were joined by Trump on stage, which is very strange because usually you go see the World Series, right? Or the NFL championship, the Super Bowl. There's no president in the middle of it. I've never seen that before. He just pushes his way on the crowd. And I know FIFA is really corrupt, but I guess they'll do anything to placate him. They're saying, oh yeah, go out on stage. There's Cole Palmer. Yeah, I was a bit confused. I didn't know he was going to be on the stand. We're English. We're Brits. We have a prime minister, not a U.S. president. And just to continue with this, he's such a complete bore. I use this on my for the thumbnail today. He said, he was asked about this. He was told, well, I'm keeping that World Cup trophy. The Chelsea gets to lift a replica, and he says, they're never going to pick it up. You can have it forever in the Oval Office. We're going to make a replica for Chelsea. Now, my guess is that it's not really a replica. They're identical. But this is such an example of Trump not reading the room, not understanding how inappropriate he sounds and how bad he sounds. He should be saying, of course, they said, if he wants to say, oh yeah, they said you can keep it. We'll make them a replica. I would have said right then, Trump should have said, it could have looked good. I told him, I'll keep the replica. They get the originals. They're the champs. It will look so much better than him saying, oh yeah, I'm so happy I get to keep it. And they got to get I mean, he has zero he's a complete narcissist. He only sees it from his perspective.
Yeah, and who's the one that's going to pull him off the stage? That nobody is, because they're all afraid of him. The entire United States is afraid of him. I think Europe's afraid of him. The whole world is afraid of him because he gets to get away with everything. I mean, he's been doing the same things for years and years and years, and he's not going to change. And, he's in a position right now where he has the power, and, there's no other, no way of stopping him, really. So he'll do whatever he wants. And
do you see, though, again, I always am trying to turn it back to what should the Democratic response be to this, if any? Should they comment on it? Should they blow it up on social media, come up with clever memes? We're going to talk about just how ugly the Trump administration's use of social media has been in just a bit. But again, there's a basic assumption in Halitics. Republicans really are bad. We have not seen good Republicans in a long time. There are a few, not every single one, not every Republican voter, but there's a basic assumption that Republicans in power are bad. There's also, so given that assumption, I focus a lot on what the response to them should be. Are you going to fight them? Are you going to be effective? So we see Trump and this isn't, look, this is nothing compared to bombing innocent civilians, not providing essential aid. Those are obviously much more important. But this is important in the sense that people take sports very seriously. And it's a worldwide, it's an international event. Soccer has 3.5 billion fans. Do you see an opportunity for Democrats here, Arlen, to use this, to leverage this event to their benefit?
I don't know if they'd get the media coverage that so people would see it, really. I mean, they just, when you look at the mainstream media, they're all corporate owned. And they're afraid of him. They're giving him, they're giving him millions of dollars to settle lawsuits that they shouldn't have to do. And so there's really, if you look around, you can get a few progressive points of view, but it's very few. The big media is going to be talking about Trump all the time, and that's what they've been doing. And I don't see any way of getting the Democrats the coverage they need to make some changes.
All right. I just think, to me, this is the kind of thing that is this event, actually, this whole situation with Trump did get, actually, Arlen, a lot of coverage. I mean, the quote by Cole Palmer was like, yeah, I was a little confused. I didn't think he would be up there for so long. That got a lot of folks talking, and it's not positive for Trump. It's embarrassing. It's the whole idea that he's not where he should be. He looks like a clown. So I think this is an area where Democrats could use it to their benefit.
Well, the problem is Trump has been doing things like that his entire career, especially since he's been president, and no one's there to say, hey, you can't do that, and you're unpopular or whatever. They pretty much, the networks have pretty much, they always go to Trump, and they disregard, any opposition. Trump doesn't have to care what he does, because his base is gonna go with him no matter what he does.
All right, we've got political writer, pundit Arlen Grossman with us, as we generally do on Tuesdays. I think we're going to get him one more week this month, being July, and then maybe not till August, but we'll keep you apprised of the situation. Don't forget, please subscribe on YouTube, the Halitics channel, if you haven't yet done so. Join Facebook Halitics subgroup, which is actually seeing some growth as well. And Arlen, you had a comment about the numbers, right? About, how many people are viewing these videos.
I'm sorry, which video?
I said you had a comment you wanted to share. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. But you had a comment you had shared earlier about the numbers that you see watching some of the Halitics videos, especially the one we did together last week.
Oh, yeah. We noticed right after the show, there might be a certain amount of people, 20 people, whatever, that they are described as views. And then like the next day, all of a sudden there'll be 500. So both Hal and I are confused about, what's the story on the views? What do they mean?
It's very strange. It's basically, I think a big part of it is what YouTube decides to put in front of people. They have this algorithm. I have no idea. Nobody understands the algorithm except, I guess, Google, except maybe they don't either. And a lot of it, and this is what I always tell people, Arlen, and I know you've been great about sharing it. When you share it, that definitely ups it puts it higher in the algorithm, so more people are likely to see the video. And the other point I just make is any comment, any click, any like, any engagement that you have with the video on YouTube will help us get more views. So please do that if you like what we're doing here. And if you don't like it, do it also. I mean, yeah. I don't care whether I want you to just click. If you don't like, I want you to like what I do. If you don't like it, I like to know why. Arlen, that's, I'm going to sort of make this a little meta, so we'll discuss this. You shared with me, I didn't put this in the slide deck. I said we might talk about it, a video of Thom Hartmann on the Egberto Willies program. That guy is a really interesting YouTuber. He does a ton of videos. And some of them have, I think I've seen up to over 100,000 views, but some of them he has just a few dozen or a couple of hundred. I thought that Hartmann video would take off. He was in the hundreds when I last checked, and it had been maybe it had been a week or two since it had been posted. So I was surprised it didn't do better, because Hartmann obviously is popular and has a big audience. It's very interesting. I have no idea why Willie sometimes blows up and other times doesn't. He's not my favorite host. He's okay. Here's my question to you, though. What did Tom gave some ideas about what makes a successful political YouTube video or YouTube podcast. What did you think of his suggestions? What did you think made sense? Did anything not make sense to you?
Yeah, Hartmann is everywhere. He's got every single media platform possible. He writes books like once a month almost, and he's got a big reach, but nothing like you'll see on these MAGA social media and all that. That's another story. But
I'm not sure that's true. I'm going to interrupt you there, Arlen. I'm not sure you're right. Now, it is true his YouTube channel alone doesn't get as many hits. But I think if you look at him across all platforms, and actually he gets a lot of views. I think he might be right, maybe not with Rogan, but with some of the other well-known conservatives. I think Tom does remarkably well. I've seen over 1 million views for some of his videos.
Yeah, he's well known and he does a good job, and he's been doing this for decades, really. But right now it's a different kind of world out there, and these right-wing MAGA blogs and social media seem to be the thing right now. They have this. I learned a new word, Groyper style. Yeah, and I'd never heard that before. But there's a lot of hate and intensity and anger out there that seems to be more popular than the kind of mild type of show that Thom Hartmann has.
Yeah, I'm going to look up, Tom. I wasn't planning to do this, but I want to look it up, because when I've seen his videos, I have always been, I won't say, I've been very, very impressed with how many views he has. So let me just show you this. Well, that's only 606. But right now he's doing a live program. Arlen, he has over 1.4 thousand watching. That's a lot. That's a very, very large number.
1,000 you said, or 1 million?
1.4K. So that's not a huge, I mean, it's that, but still for lots of videos, that's very, very significant. And I don't think his primary platform is even YouTube, but I'm looking at this. I would have thought he had even more. Let me see how many subscribers he has. Maybe I'm overstating it. 482,000 subscribers. So you're right. There's definitely more for a lot of Republicans, but he's on radio. You mentioned the books. Maybe I had thought I saw a bigger number somewhere. I'm not sure where. I would note there are progressive podcasters like Crystal Ball and Sagar. I think they're over 2 million. Same with Kyle Kulinski, and their politics is very similar to Hartmann's. So these are some very, very successful progressive, so-called progressives out there.
But how do they do compared to, the MAGA sources? That's what you have to look at, because, if they get a couple million here and there, that's nice, but it's not going to really change the average person's view of the Democratic Party. But, the article that if I don't know if we'll have a chance to discuss it, was talking about how the MAGA base, the right-wing base, has been working, for decades to try to improve their reach and their views, and that seems to be what's popular right now. There's a lot of hate, a lot of anger, a lot of yelling, a lot of emotion, and you won't find that on the progressive type sites, I don't think, but definitely they're popular among the MAGA base.
Well, there's a lot of aggressive stuff on both sides, but I think what really sets the Trump or sets the right apart or sets Trump apart is this is coming from the White House. This isn't from rabid supporters. This isn't from angry activists. This is from the actual White House itself that's ginning up this kind of, I think, without question, violent rhetoric. And it is extremely upsetting. So we're not talking about, again, base or, even like Steve Bannon, who's not in the White House right now, but we're talking about the administration itself. And this is from Trolling Democracy, July 13th. I wanted to share some of these very upsetting memes. Arlen, of course, bringing the article to our attention. And so, like, if you want to just comment, here's the, it's immature, it's childish, this alligator Alcatraz nonsense. I don't know if you want to comment on each individually or on any thoughts on this, or just.
Well, I do want to say that there's, a lot of anger, a lot of hate out there. And I think it sometimes expresses itself with actual violence, with people, in danger, their families in danger, they're being threatened. And, sometimes there are guns involved. We saw that Minnesota lawmaker who got killed. And I think those things are going to unfortunately continue and get worse, especially since obviously there's not going to be any attempts to control guns in this country. So that worries me. All the violence that is going to be in our future, I think. And
it's just this whole thing with the alligator Alcatraz is, so, and it's so irresponsible, really, so reckless with our money. It's not going to make anybody safer. It's just, it's appeal. It's a kind of a crude emotional appeal. Same thing here. This is actually a still from a video. Again, this is from the White House. Remember, this is not from some Newsmax watcher or somebody in their basement in a one of those T-shirts with sleeveless T-shirts. This is the White House. We're paying for the production of these videos. So illegal alien deportation flight, and they show people in chains. I don't know, just a still. It makes you sad. It really does that we've declined to this point, Arlen.
Yeah, well, we are now at a point where we're living in a police state. I think there's a lot of danger for a lot of people for speaking up, and certainly I don't know that there's a difference between what the White House is saying and doing versus all the social media out there and news out there from the MAGA base. It's all part of one giant conspiracy in my feeling. Trump and his people are all together, and they're trying to just destroy what's left of the Democratic Party and progressives.
Well, I'm more concerned about and I'm sure you are too, to destroying, a lot of really important things that we still have in this country, that, there's still some shreds of a social safety net, some environmental protections, although they're rapidly going. I think he's trying to completely, or he will dismantle the Department of Education. And yeah, the Department of Education, a lot of problems. They're kind of a sink for money in certain ways, but it also distributed absolutely essential money for poor kids, meals and the like. And now that's, I presume, gone. And it's terrible.
And that's not going to help children learn. It's not going to, help, with education at all. But I think, the fact that they've kind of decimated, the education department, and more recently that they're decimating all the climate controls, all the, FEMA and all these scientific programs. And I think they're, very much connected to what happened in Texas and the fact that, the people in Texas were not warned, and they should have been, but Trump wants to cut, all those things from the agencies that could help them and warn them. And so, that's why it happened, and it may happen some more.
Well, again, one of the ways you and I do disagree, I think we pretty much agree on just how bad Trump is, although on certain areas, certain issues, we don't see eye to eye. Although lately he's now expanding the war against, or the war, the proxy war with Russia, which I don't like. Maybe you're happier with that, I suppose, or less unhappy, or whatever the right expression is for that. But on balance, we both think this guy is really, really bad. I think one area where we disagree is that I think the Democrats could do more, should be doing more, if only to present themselves as a true opposition party, true alternative, and they don't. One area where they might have some room to encroach on Trump's turf, if you will, is when it comes to these Epstein files, which Trump had promised to release, talked about a cover-up over and over, that there was no discussion of them. And then in the end, there's no divulging of information. And not only that, no prosecutions by the Justice Department beyond, what we've already seen, which is against Ghislaine, I've heard it pronounced both ways, Maxwell, and now dead, and almost certainly murdered in my view. I just do not accept that he somehow committed suicide. Or if he did, he was allowed to commit suicide and was pressured to do so. That would be Epstein, of course. So here's a meme or a post that got a lot of views from AOC. Wow, who would have thought that electing a rapist would have complicated the release of the Epstein files? I have a reaction to that, Arlen, but I'd like to get yours. Is this an area where Democrats should go? And is this effective in your opinion?
Well, this was the first time I think that the MAGA base really, fought back against the White House. But I think it's already kind of dissipating. I think they realize that Trump's not going to change his mind, and so they might as well continue to go with Trump, because he's everything. He's the entire Republican Party. He's the entire opposition to the Democrats. So they're just going to fall in line and agree with him, or at least ignore what should be something that should be controversial and should be looked into more.
Well, I agree with you. I think it is dissipating, and I think this is a terrible lost opportunity by Democrats. Why not come forward and say, we need to see that information. If you elect us, if you give us a majority next year, we're going to pass a law requiring that this information be made public. Wouldn't that be a way to make a little bit of, put a little breach in the Trump MAGA wall to say, yeah, this was an area where Trump said he was going to do something. We agree. We need to know what rich and powerful people in this country and around the world were engaged in trafficking underage girls to some island somewhere and then having sex with them. Who's doing that? Who was doing that? Was there high-level government officials involved? We want to know. We agree with you. Maybe there's nothing there. Maybe all these people who say there's nothing, they're right. We don't believe them. We're going to help. If you elect us, this is something we'll do. I mean, it seems to me that's such an easy, low-hanging fruit for the Democrats.
I think it would be easy, and it's a good idea if somehow the Democrats could get together and decide, hey, this is our leadership. This is who we are, and if everybody comes together, that would probably help. But right now they're kind of split all over the place, and nobody really respects or talks much about what Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries thinks. I'd like to see the Democrats come out stronger in these areas, but They have to come together. I think people have to say, "Oh, this is the Democratic Party. They're willing to do something about this." They're, if that happens, that'll help. But I'm not sure how they'll do it.
All right, Arlen, let me just make one more criticism of AOC's post. As you know, I'm often very harshly critical of her. I think this sends the absolute wrong message. Rather than showing some sympathy and empathy for Trump's base and saying, hey, yeah, maybe, this was an error. Trump said the right thing, but he did the wrong thing. We get it, but we'll do the right thing by you. She mocks them. She's like, oh, wow, how stupid were you to think that electing a rapist would lead to the release of the Epstein files? Why would you do that? Why would you attack Trump voters? In fact, we know that some of Trump voters actually voted for her. She even talked about that. She said she wanted to talk to people in her district who voted for her for Congress and Trump for president in 2024. So given that fact, don't you think it seems like an awfully self-defeating message to attack people, some of whom voted for her themselves?
Well, it was actually a good issue and one that Trump really fell down on, and there was such angry opposition to him from his base. The first time ever, I think we've ever seen it. But then, like we talked about, it's already dissipating because they're totally in with Trump. And as far as AOC, I just don't know if she's going to get the attention that she should get. And
she gets a lot of attention. She's a kind of a media star. She gets, and thing is one thing if you say, well, they're not, you don't see them on the talk shows, but remember, there's new media, and when it comes to videos, podcasts, she's everywhere. She's a huge fundraising machine for the Democrats. She's got a lot of influence among younger voters. So maybe it's true that for people who just watch Sunday morning talk shows and the cable news stations, they don't see her as much, but she has a lot of influence.
Well, she does have a lot of influence within the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, and there's millions of progressives out there, but they're kind of overshadowed by the number of MAGA people. And I think another thing that the MAGA people have to their advantage is they've got a lot of money. They've got billionaires behind them that are willing to subsidize any kind of media or to help their base. And the Democrats just seem kind of like they don't know what to do. They're confused, and like I say, they've got to find a way to get together, and so people will understand this is the Democratic Party. This is what we're going to do, and please vote for us. But it's going to take a while.
It is indeed, and we're certainly nowhere near out of the woods. We've got Arlen with us. This is Halitics. Don't forget, click like, click subscribe, click join Halitics on Facebook. Do whatever you possibly can to be part of this community. We really, really, really appreciate that. Before we get, so Arlen, of course, blogs at thebigpicturereport.com. Do want to urge you to go there. And we're going to get to the latest post on the Big Picture Report in a moment. But just real quick, the other point, we're talking about Hartman, we're talking about him and what his ideas are that make a good podcast. And I wanted your feedback on this, Arlen, because I thought he actually made some really good points, which is the host has to be it's a personality driven medium. And I have never found Tom's personality to be particularly appealing, but obviously it is to enough people. But I don't know what I don't do that he thinks we should do. And you said the same thing. Yeah, you do what he says, but I think it's more than just a personality. You have to somehow. It's hard. No one really knows. I think a lot of people have no idea why they're successful or not.
Well, you're right about Tom Hartman's personality. He's very low key, very moderate. Sounding, and he doesn't come across as being, angry or, desperate or anything like that. So, he'll get his number of people because he's very smart, and explains a lot of things very well, but he's not going to get the big audiences that some of these, like Fox News has, or, Newsmax and those kind of things. And by the way, I saw recently statistics on how much viewership that Fox has, so much more than CNN and MSNBC combined. And it's not even close. There's just, a lot of people who are fixated and watch those right-wing MAGA type programs. And that's going to be, I don't know how the progressive movement is going to get the bigger media, but they're going to have to find a way. And I hope maybe somebody with a lot of money will help do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors involved. I think it's hard for me to know. I think there's certainly something that seems on its face a little more appealing about conservative ideology, that sort of this rugged individualism. People want to see themselves as like a gunfighter in an old Western movie, standing up against everyone else. You don't need anyone. You don't need government. So I think that's part of it. It just seems more attractive in a way to be the rugged individualist. It's consistent with our ethos as a nation. I think there's the problem that more, let's call it liberal media, has tended to view itself as responsible for the Democratic Party and responsible to support and promote the Democratic Party. Certainly that is something Thom Hartmann doesn't do always, but he definitely does it whenever there's a national election. He has consistently championed whoever the Democratic nominee is, no matter how bad they are. And I don't think that is does him any favors. It makes him look like he's not independent. It makes him look like he's captured by the party. And I think that almost certainly hurts him in his overall numbers. Compared to someone like Joe Rogan does not appear to be. If you watch any of his videos, he doesn't ever come across as a flack for Trump or for the Republicans. He may have said, I supported Trump, but he'll often criticize Trump. But Hartmann would just throw whoppers out there, as does Robert Reich. And I think that they clearly are partisan, and that makes them look like hacks a lot of the time.
What do you mean by whoppers? What kind of whoppers are you talking about?
Like just saying things that are flat out false. I mean, saying when Thom Hartmann said Hillary Clinton, or Robert Reich said to Thom Hartmann, Hillary Clinton will be a great president. No one knew better than Robert Reich in 2016 that Hillary Clinton would be a terrible president. She had repeatedly been a thorn in his side when he was in the Clinton White House. She had stepped on him. She had shunted him aside. She had not been an ally in his efforts to move the White House to the left on some issues. So he had to know. He supported Bernie Sanders. He saw the way she attacked Bernie Sanders. So the idea that that Reich would say on Hartmann's program, and Hartmann would just agree with it, Hillary will be a great president, I mean, it's just clearly not true.
Unfortunately, as I say every week, it's our political system that's messed up, and that's all that really matters. You got a Democratic Party, Republican Party. They have all the power, they have all the money, and there's third parties are pretty much impossible to make any progress under those conditions. So, yeah, I mean, if Trump or Reich doesn't support the Democratic Party, who are they going to support?
Well, he could have supported the Green candidate, and he should have supported the Green candidate, in my opinion. But okay, if he's not going to support them, then support Hillary, but be honest. Don't tell us the sky is, whatever. Don't tell us you're handing us a ham and Swiss when you're giving us a turd sandwich. Be honest. Say, yeah, it's gross, it's turd, but it's better. At least it's a well-formed turd as opposed to a wet, disgusting one that's the Trump turd sandwich. At least try to be honest with us, because you lose all credibility when you say things that are obviously evidently untrue. Just like when AOC said at the DNC, Kamala's working tirelessly for a ceasefire. It wasn't true. We all know it wasn't true. It came out that it wasn't true. The Israeli government said they never told us that they were going to stop supporting us. They were always there for us. So, be honest at least. I think that was one of the more conservative posters on Halitics made that point. Even they said, the dishonesty is what bothers me more than anything else. And I think it would be nice, refreshing to have people who on the left, like Hartman, like Rice, who are very prepared to call the Democratic Party for what it is, a corrupt billionaire, vessel, the billionaire-controlled vessel.
That'll never happen, Hal. I mean, you just don't, build a movement by saying how bad your own party is. It's not going to work.
But how can you build a movement if your party's really bad? You can't.
Well, that's where the Democrats have to, figure out who they are and what they are and what they have to do, because obviously it's not working. And right now, it's the Trumpsters who have all the advantage. They have all the money and the audience right now, and they're pretty hard to stop. So the Democrats definitely need to do something major, but what it'll be that will cause people to take notice and think about them more. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they need to do it.
All right, here's the New York Times. This is from thebigpicturereport.com. And Arlen, you put this on your website. You didn't actually recommend this for today's program, but I wanted to discuss a little bit. But you tell me why you thought it was an important enough article for you to spotlight at thebigpicturereport.com.
Well, these things are going to happen. These horrible climate changes, the storms, the droughts, the wildfire, all those things are going to be happening. And Trump is pretty much cutting off all the funding for anything in the federal government that would help prevent those things or, help rescue the people. The Trump people, I think of, global warming or climate change as some kind of a hoax and are not interested in really doing anything about it. And when you come right down to it, whatever they would do would cost business some money and hurt people's profits. So they're just going to go all out, and they're just not going to make the changes necessary to help these kind of efforts. And then, same goes for any science or health or, cutting off cancer funding and things like that. They just don't care about those things. And Robert F. Kennedy, as our Health and Human, Secretary, he's not doing anything that's positive, and measles the number of measles cases are rising. So the Trump forces have no respect at all for science, for health, but they seem to get away with it.
Yeah, I can't argue with that, Arlen. I think you're right on this, right on, and the New York Times is as well. And it's very, very, very upsetting. We'll get into a little bit why this is happening and whether Democrats can make hay out of it. I think this is an issue, unlike some of the others, where it would be tough for the Democrats to make inroads. I think talked a little bit brief about a couple of other areas like Trump's boorishness, his crudeness, the situation with the Epstein files, where I think, the Democrats might have some opportunities, certainly with Israel. Here, I think it's going to be very tough because one thing that is hard, and I think this is partly because of right-wing propaganda. You talk a lot about the media, corporate media, or right-wing propaganda. Sometimes I think you exaggerate its power. I think one area where it's really demonstrated its influence is that people just don't believe the government can help them. And the government is essential to help people. And I think a lot of the reason people like Rush Limbaugh, Hannity, Fox News have just gone out of their way to demonize government and to say that Ronald Reagan, the biggest lie ever, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. That's very, very unfortunate. I'm not saying Democrats have fought it as effectively as they should have, because they haven't. But nevertheless, people really are so cynical and skeptical about government right now that
they sure are.
It's tough to say we need to spend more money on, say, forecasting storms. I think we do. I think we need to spend more on climate. One other point I'll make, Earl, and then get you back on. But I kind of rejected the argument. I heard from some people, I'm going to vote for Kamala, or I would have voted for Biden, or I'm going to vote for Pete in 2028. Because even though I don't like them, I don't think they're good. I think they are corrupt. I'm going to choose my enemy. And I'd rather have an enemy that at least will fund government agencies and will listen to the science. I'm not very convinced that people like Pete Buttigieg or Kamala Harris, I'm not convinced she even understands the science. But what I would say, as long as these agencies like NOAA, National Weather Forecasting Services, and others, FEMA, are well funded, we'll have evidence. We'll have the information we can use to demand change. Now, they may not change, but at least we'll have the information out there and we can use it. So this is a very, very scary development, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's only going to get worse, Hal, because climate change is very real and it's happening more and more. And we're going to have instances like we have in Texas, where there just won't be the funding to help people out. Here's a statistic. Last year, the United States experienced 27 disasters that cost more than $1 billion each. You know, that's a lot, and we're going to have a lot more of those kind of things. And, you know, once people see that the government is not doing anything to help, maybe that'll help the opposition party, but it's going to be tough.
Yep, 100%. It's very depressing. The budget proposal closing 10 NOAA labs, absolutely insane. I mean, it's insane, but you know what? So few people right now aren't even acknowledging the climate catastrophe. They're just in flat out denial. And you know, that's one of the things that makes me most depressed, Arlen.
No, it's horrible to see what was going on in Texas. All those, you know, hundreds of people had no idea what was happening, and they should have been warned in some way or another. I mean, there was. Well, I understand there was warnings from the Weather Service, and I'd have to look a little more closely. If you have some information, I know we don't have it. This story wasn't really about Texas, but the biggest problem with Texas, I think, is that this was one of those, again, once in a century storms that are happening every 2 years because of what we're doing to our environment. Yeah, it's going to be a constant problem, I think, and you know, whether it be flooding, whether it be drought, whether it be wildfire, you know, all the different climate disasters that could come along, we've got to get some kind of control over them, some kind of grip on doing something about it. Otherwise, you know, they'll start affecting our economy really badly, and of course, nobody. Well, it already is. Apparently, like GDP is down. I read one estimate that our GDP is 3% lower than it would otherwise be because of extreme weather secondary to global warming. Yeah. And think of the insurance companies. They're certainly going to jack up their rates all the time, and a lot of people won't be able to afford insurance. Unless they go bankrupt. Yeah. There's just a lot to be glum about. There's no question. All right, Arlen, before we go, I know we got a little over the hour, but you never object to that. Maybe you do. I don't know if you have lunch scheduled or something, but I just wanted to share this last story because this was part of a debate that I had online with one of your bête noirs, and this was about how badly off so many Americans are, how rough it is for Americans, and how we absolutely need government programs that address this. And I use the expression virtually nothing, that more than half of Americans, this is my expression, have virtually nothing. And I was immediately responded with what do you mean they have nothing? And I had to say, well, I didn't say nothing. I said virtually. It's not the same thing. Oh, what's the difference? Well, virtually means almost. And this is from you can see, this is just after Trump was inaugurated, January of 25. Less than half of Americans, in other words, when I said most Americans, less than half of Americans have savings available to pay for an emergency expense of $1,000 or more. If you don't have $1,000 in the bank, you have virtually nothing. It's that simple. If you don't have $1,000 saved, you have virtually nothing. This is an area where Democrats, this, by the way, explains Mamdani, first of all, his success. And to me, this is, again, what Democrats have to use
to try to get elected, because people who are hungry, people who are scared, everything else is every other consideration. President is rude. I don't care. President gropes women. I don't care. President tortures immigrants. I don't care. I want to be able to sleep at night without fear of becoming homeless. And that fear actually grew during the Biden administration. I'm not going to say it's all the Democrats' fault. We could point fingers at the Republicans too. Republican policies also make things worse, and Republicans stand in the way when Democrats do try fitfully to improve the quality of the lives of poor, Australian working class people. But nevertheless, Democrats have failed to address the worsening economic plight of so many Americans, and they need to do that, Arlen.
Yeah, of course, the Republican Party is making things actually a lot worse. But what you're talking about here, I think, is that you don't have the middle class that we used to have. We used to have a middle class where you could have one job and you can buy a home and buy a car and have a vacation and send your kids to college. But that is the middle class is no longer there. You can see that it's less than half of Americans when it used to be over half. And, the way the trend is certainly getting worse, especially when inequality is so much a factor. I mean, the rich continue to get much richer and the poor continue to, lose money. And certainly you're not going to get a change from that, from the Republican Party. I mean, they were giving tax breaks to all the billionaires and all the rich people. So definitely you're not going to find any help from the Republican Party. That is something I think the Democrats have to really focus on, trying to build up the economy, build up the middle class, all those, they just, it has to be done. Because otherwise, we're just going to see more poverty and more people needing help, and they're not going to get it from this administration.
And also, right, we're not going to see it. And if the Democrats, when they do have the ability to make change, don't, then they're not going to stay in power. And I think that's very, very important to bear in mind. All right, Arlen, we're almost done. I promise you, I'll let you go in just a moment. But I don't know if you know this, and you also get your last word, of course. But I don't know if you know this. There's a special election right now going on in Arizona, District 7. That is Tempe. No, not Tempe. It is Tucson. Tempe is outside of, is part of Maricopa County, which is Phoenix. Tempe is, that's where the University, Arizona State University is. So this is Tucson, where the University of Arizona is. Are you familiar? Have you been following this at all, or are you aware of this? This is to replace Raul Grijalva.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen things here and there, but I don't know a lot about it.
Basically, it's really come down to two candidates, in some ways a little bit like what happened in New York City between Andrew Cuomo, scion of the New York family dynasty, former governor, and insurgent youthful candidate Mamdani. Here you have Halitics Grijalva, who is the daughter of Raul Grijalva, and she's quite a bit older, 54, versus Deja Fox, a social media influencer who's 25. Now, I don't want to draw any comparisons between Grijalva and Cuomo. As far as I know, Halitics Grijalva is not corrupt like Cuomo. She's not a bully like Cuomo. She's not a sexual harasser like Cuomo. But still, she's part of the Democratic elite in her district. And obviously, Cuomo was in New York. So I have taken the position that the best candidate is neither Fox nor certainly Grijalva, but Jose Malvito. I want to play this. I want your thoughts, Arlen, and then your final word. Here we go.
I think that it's really easy to talk about Donald Trump. That's a given. But what we need in Congress is a long-term vision to transform the Democratic Party in order to take back the Congress. Not just to win it back, to lose it again, this back and forth. We need to transform the Democratic Party. So part of this is proposing a higher minimum wage, Medicare for all, and really supporting the people in that way. Affordable housing, all these different issues that people need. But again, it's not just about the low-hanging fruit, which is Donald Trump. Anybody could talk about Trump, but it's really about transforming the Democratic Party for the long term, because we have lost it and we need to get it back.
All right, Arlen, your thoughts, real quick, response, and then final word.
Well, I heard a lot of those things in the last election about, higher minimum wage and all the other progressive points of view, but it didn't seem to work because of lots of other reasons. So, but yeah, I'd like to see the Democratic Party become a lot more progressive and, push these kind of things, support unions and minimum wages and, all the things that help working people, which are the people that the Democrats used to support, and or at least those people used to go and support the Democratic Party, but they needed to get that message out there, and so far it's going to be tough.
All right, and Arlen, final word as we head on into the sunset.
Well, I guess you may have heard that Cuomo is going to run again in the general election in New York for mayor. So they obviously, the Democratic, I guess the Democratic leadership does not like who won the primary, and they're going, and Cuomo thinks they're going to support him in that election.
All right, since you brought it up, what's your prediction? What will happen?
Well, I've got to think that the one who won, what's his name again?
Zoran Mamdani.
Yeah, I expect him to win, but we don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
And what do you think the Democratic electeds in New York State and city will do? Specifically, Governor Hochul, she has not endorsed anyone at this point. Senator Gillibrand has actually had a run-in with Mamdani, although she subsequently apologized for it. I'm going to talk about that apology tomorrow. Schumer, Jeffries, some of the most powerful Democrats in the country make New York their home. What are they going to do?
Well, I hope they'll eventually go with Mondavi, because he's the winner. He's the one that was, made a big difference. And then we're talking about New York here, New York City. It's a pretty progressive Democratic area. So, he should be winning. And if Cuomo kind of divides the Democratic Party, that's going to be bad.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to see Mamdani take on the Democratic elites. I want to see him stop reaching out to them, stop seeking their approval, say, hey, they can support me if they want. I'm not going to, that's up to them, but I'm not it's not going to be a business as usual Democratic administration. We're going to do things a lot differently, much as you just heard Jose Malvito say during that debate. I'd love to see Mamdani say that, but he hasn't, and that to me is just a little bit troubling at this point. Well, all right, Arlen, go ahead. Anything else?
Well, he seems very independent, and I think he'd be willing to, continue on the kind of course he was that helped him win the nomination. So, anyway, I'm hopeful.
I'm hopeful of that too. I want to give you one more name. Now, I'm not a fan of Governor Hochul in New York. She's not somebody that I think is a great progressive in any way. But I would say this. If you're looking for a candidate who could win in the presidency as a Democrat in 28, I'm not convinced it isn't Kathy Hochul. Kathy Hochul could stand out to the left if she does endorse Mamdani. If she comes out and says, yeah, I support Mamdani, Mamdani wins. And Hochul also, although she stood in the way of the congestion pricing plan in New York City for quite a while, she ultimately did agree to it. And now she's embraced it. She can position herself as the one who brought congestion pricing to New York, as phony as that would be. A lot of people would buy it. It's not 100% false because she finally did agree to it. I do think Kathy Hochul is somebody that you could possibly see as the Democratic nominee in about 3 years.
Yeah, well, I'm in California, so I don't know too much about what's going on in New York and Hochul, but I'm definitely going to look into it if you think she's somebody that, has a chance, I'll look into her and, see
She
what
may
she's
not
about.
run. I've never heard anyone say she's going to run, but I can guarantee you if she is bandied about as a potential nominee, I would be shocked if she didn't at least test the waters.
Good. We need people like that.
I will say this, Arlen, last point from me, and then I always give you the last word, so I've been taken away from you. I think if you listen to Kathy Hochul speak and you hear her in interviews, she definitely comes across, in my opinion, as a much more effective politician and much more intelligent responder than Kamala did.
Well, I'd like to see her, get out there and show us what she could do, because Democrats definitely need a good, strong candidate. And so far, there's no one particular one that really stands out. Like Gavin Newsom doesn't excite that many people. So we'll see.
I agree with that. I think Hochul would be a better general election candidate than Newsom at this point. All right, final word, Arlen, are we done?
I think we're done. We covered a lot.
All right, great to have Arlen on. Looking forward to next week with him and hope he enjoys the rest of the month. And I say thank you for being part of Halitics.
All right.